Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Stasia Holdren, and thank you, O'Reilly Media. Thank you, Yas, for inviting me here to speak today. So today I'm going to be going over some of the many updates that Google AdWords has launched since the book was published. This is the story of every AdWords advertiser's life, where just as you are familiar with the platform and you have things set up how you want them, Google goes and changes something. So that is the blessing and the curse that it's always getting better. So today I'm going to be going over some of the more critical updates that have happened since January 1st, 2012. So let's start going through it. All right, first and foremost, let's talk about match types. Well, Google is about to launch an important change with phrase and exact match. I kind of jokingly call it almost phrase or pretty close to exact, because now all of your keywords that are phrase and exact will also potentially trigger ads on variations like misspellings, singular and plural forms, stemmings, acronyms, accented characters, and abbreviations. So this will be the new default as of mid-May. It has not launched yet, but it will probably be rolling out within the next week. So what do we do about this? If you don't want or you don't like this new behavior, you do have the ability to opt out, which is good. So what you would need to do is you'd go to your campaign settings for each of your campaigns and then go down to the advanced settings area of that page. From there, you'll see a new button that's labeled Keyword Matching Options, and you'll have to open that and then select the radio button that says Do Not Include Close Variants. If you don't do that, by default, this new matching behavior is going to be automatically applied to all of your campaigns in about a week. Okay, so let's talk about some other things that might be of concern. So the next obvious question is, well, how is this going to impact quality score? Because as you know, the closer the query matches the keyword in the account in general, the better quality score you're going to get. So AdWords is still only going to use the exact keyword, not these close variants, to determine your quality score and your first page bid estimate. So it doesn't mean that if you are allowing all these variants to come in that it is going to impact your quality score in any way. It's only if the query exactly matches the keyword in the account that the quality score will be calculated. So that's the first piece that people may be asking about. Another piece that may affect you is how you're going to see things in the See Search Terms report, which is one of my favorite reports in AdWords. So you will see, when you look at the report, you're looking for the match type column. And so now you will see, and the column will be two new options. There'll be exact match and phrase match, and in parentheses around it, it's going to say close variants, which means it's almost exact, or it's pretty close to that phrase. So just things to keep in mind in the next few weeks when this rolls out. You'll also be able to segment your data by the match type, and you can apply the new search. And the new search behavior is going to apply to this type of report. So that's the biggest change with keyword match type. And again, it's only going to impact your phrase and exact match keywords. Okay, let's talk about change number 2. And so this launched in January. It's improvements on impression share metrics. So previously, impression share was only available at the AdWords campaign level. And well, let me start by defining it. What exactly is impression share? It is the percentage of impressions that your ads receive, which you divide by the estimated number of impressions you are eligible to receive. So basically it tells you of the amount of traffic volume in there, of the clicks that you could have got, how many did you actually get? So obviously the higher, the better. So now they're going to make an improvement, they've made it, where we can see impression share at the ad group level. And so now we can really get a better picture about what within our campaigns is working and what's not, so we can work on trying to capture more of the available impressions for each of the ad groups. So you'll see 3 new columns that are going to be included under your Ad Groups tab in your account. You'll see one that's labeled Impression Share, which is, as again, the impressions of, the percentage of impressions you received divided by the number you could have received. And you'll also see something called Lost IS, or Lost Impression Share by rank. And that is the share of these impressions that you lost because of your ad rank. That is where your ad appeared on the page compared to the other advertisers on that page. The third type is called the exact match impression share, and this is only for the search network. It's not for the GDN or the Google Display Network. And this is the percentage of impressions you received for searches that exactly matched your keyword. So those are 3 new columns that you will notice under the Ad Groups tab. One final thing about this, AdWords also changed the algorithm to calculate impression share. They say that it makes the calculations more accurate, and what it did, they basically retrofitted this new algorithm to our statistics going back to May 2011. So you're not going to be able to see campaign-level historical impression share metrics now before May 2011. Those are gone. But we can see them from that point forward with the new algorithm applied. The other thing that changed is that now the frequency is going to be once a day. So around noon in Mountain View time, they're going to change or recalculate the algorithm, which means that the results that we see are not real time. There is probably a 1, maybe even a 2-day delay on impression share metrics. So those are the big changes to note for impression share. Okay, let's talk about the third big change, and this is a good one. Now we have crazy big limits. And so AdWords, when I first started teaching, there were only 25 available campaigns by default in an AdWords account. So many advertisers literally had dozens of AdWords accounts because the account limits just weren't sufficient to handle all of the campaigns that they needed to advertise for their businesses. I think AdWords has pretty much taken care of that. I don't have any clients who need more than this. The new account limits are 10,000 campaigns, and that includes your active and your paused campaigns. So within that, you have 20,000 ad groups per campaign. I was not a math major, but if I had a calculator, I could start doing this out. For each of these ad groups, we could have 5,000 keywords. We could have 300 display ads. You can have 4 million active or paused ads in each AdWords account, 5 million keywords per account. You can have 10,000 location targets, which are both the targets that you will want to show ads in and your exclusions per campaign. And you can have 100,000 ad extensions per account, 100,000 active ad extensions. Now, if any of you are using ad extensions now, you may know that you can actually share those across different campaigns. So those are called referenced ad extensions. You can have 1.3 million references to the ad extensions in your account. So the limits are really huge. There is very little reason now for the majority of advertisers to have more than one AdWords account, which is a good thing for all of us. Incidentally, if you use AdWords Editor or the API, all of these things, they are compatible with these new AdWords account limits. So that is the third big change that's launched. Okay, love this picture. All right, we're going to talk about targeting improvements as the fourth big change. So AdWords is now going to allow us to do a better job actually showing ads to people in specific places. And there were 4 changes that I would like to go over today. So with the previous version of location targeting, if you had selected the option that's labeled Target Using Physical Location, your ad would show to people in that area as long as they weren't searching for something in a different location. So here's the example. Let's say I actually recently went to Australia, which is probably the trip of a lifetime. And so if I was here in Nashville and I was doing a search for a flight to Sydney, so let's say my query was flight to Sydney, flight to Brisbane. And those were the keywords in my ad group. And let's pretend that there was an airline here in the United States that wanted to advertise to me in Nashville, Tennessee, flights that would take me to my proposed destination. Well, even though I was physically located in their target area, because my query included keywords like Sydney or Brisbane or Australia, it indicated that I wasn't interested in something here, and so they wouldn't be able to show me my ads. So that was a problem, because if you were trying to hit people who were in Nashville but were searching for stuff elsewhere, the ads wouldn't show. So now what it's going to do, it's going to say, all right, if this person is actually located in this physical location, don't make an exception if I include keywords like Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne in my query. If they know I'm in Nashville and you as the advertiser are targeting Nashville, the ads can show to me. So that's a good improvement. All right, the second thing that I wanted to talk about is how they're doing location targeting on the Google Display Network, or the GDN. Some of you may know of the GDN as previously known as the Content Network. All right, so let's talk about how it used to work. So the Google Display Network used to really depend on the physical location. It would say, all right, based on the IP address of this computer, we know that Stasia is in Nashville, Tennessee. And so what they would do is they would say, all right, based on that and your targeting, the advertiser's targeting preferences, we can show ads to her as she's going around looking at sites that display ads from the AdSense network because she's located in Nashville. Well, the new targeting improvement is that Google can actually not only look at my physical location as a person who's looking at web pages, it can also basically extract location from what web pages I'm looking at. So if I am interested in, if I'm reading websites about my future trip to Australia, Google Display Network can say, okay, look, based on the web pages that she's looking at, this person wants to see stuff about Australia. And it could show me ads that were actually targeted to Australia because I'm interested in that. In your account, the way that's going to be labeled under your display settings and where it's going to show, it's called People in Searching for or Viewing Pages About My Targeted Location. So that's the new default setting and how it's labeled. So one other thing that's pretty nice about it is that it's supposed to be a relatively intelligent algorithm. So again, let's use my Australia example. Let's say I am planning to go to Brisbane, and I took my family to go, we actually went to the Australia Zoo, which is where Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, is from. It was amazing. Anyway, so I'm sitting here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm reading web pages about my trip, trying to figure out, my day at the zoo and the itinerary and what I want to look at. And based on this, Google could say, all right, Stasia is interested in Australia and she's interested in this, so we're going to serve up ads to her based on what she's looking at. Now, what if I was sitting here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was reading pages about, there was actually a huge political spat going on in Australia when I was there. And so I was just curious to see which of the parties had come out on top. So I was going and reading news sites or stock tickers on companies or something like that, that was more of a business or news-related item about Australia. Well, Google's algorithm is smart enough to say, okay, we don't know enough about what this person wants. We're not convinced that she's necessarily planning a trip or looking for something that could be related to an advertiser's intent. So based on that, they call these signals from a page, they might not show me the AdWords ad. So it's pretty cool, and that is the new default on the display network. Another thing that they changed, the third one, is advanced location exclusions. Okay, so the previous default was exclude by physical location only. Okay, so the way this would work is that let's just say you're an AdWords advertiser and you don't want to show your ad to people in Sydney. And so in this case, your ad wouldn't show to people whose IP address identified them as being in Sydney, Australia, but your ad would show to people who included the keyword Sydney as part of their queries because by their search intent, they're interested in information about Sydney, Australia. So there's a new default in your campaign settings, and it's more restrictive, which I actually prefer. And this one is labeled people in, searching for, or viewing pages about my excluded location. That means everything. Anybody, whether they're sitting in Sydney, Australia, or they're sitting here in Nashville, Tennessee, and reading about Sydney, Australia, cannot see the ads. So this change is only going to roll out to newly created campaigns. If you want to implement this on existing campaigns, you need to go back to your campaign settings to where your location targeting is and then update the exclusion default. So that's pretty cool and just launched out. And the fourth is that, well, I guess you could make an argument that this is more or less understandable. I think that the verbiage is more understandable. So now, again, we're going to reiterate the three options that you have for location targeting. The first one, which is the default, is people in, searching for, or viewing pages about my targeted location. And that means if you are, let's say you're an advertiser in Sydney, Australia, if people are sitting in Sydney and they can see your ad, if people are searching from Nashville, Tennessee for things to do or hotels to stay in Sydney, Australia, they could potentially see your ad. Or if I am reading a blog or a website about cool activities to do. In Sydney, they have these giant bats. I love bats to begin with, but these things are like the size of cats. I kid you not, and they hang from the trees and they chatter all day long. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, so I could be reading about that on a blog, and I could potentially see those advertisers' ads. So those are, that's the first one. The second option is simply people in my targeted location, and that's it. They have to be, Google has to know that this searcher is in Sydney, that this person is in Sydney to be able to see the advertiser's ad. So even if I'm in Nashville, it doesn't, if I'm looking for stuff in Sydney, I can't see the ad because I'm not in that targeted location. Okay, the third option is labeled people searching for or viewing pages about my targeted location. And so in this case, the actual location of the person is completely ignored. So how does this work? So, all right, let's say that we are advertising for bat viewing tours as an example. And so somebody is sitting in Sydney. Oh, and it's geo-targeted, of course, to Sydney, Australia. So somebody sitting in Sydney does a search on Google for bat viewing tours. Now, because that person didn't specify Sydney or Sydney, Australia, Google doesn't know where they want to find this bat viewing tour, and the actual location of that person is ignored. So they might not see the ad, versus somebody in Nashville, Tennessee, who does a search for bat viewing tours in Sydney, Australia. That person would see or could see the ad because we've expressed by our intent where we want to see the ads. If this is confusing to you, go to the AdWords Help Center, and there's a really good article, and they show different examples and sort of a chart of if this, then will show or won't show. And you want to look for the location exclusion defaults. Okay, so those are the 4 big changes, improvements for your location targeting. Let's look at number 5. If any of you have not experimented with automatic rules, they're automated rules, I highly recommend them. So what exactly is this? An automated rule is an AdWords feature, and it basically does stuff for you. It lets you save time by scheduling changes to your account automatically based on a set of rules that you're going to set up. And so there was some good feedback, I think, to the AdWords team. The previous limit was 10 rules, which really was not enough, I think, for most advertisers to really get to apply enough to an individual account. So now AdWords has upped the limit to 100 rules per AdWords account. So that's a much better group of framework of rules to work with to make some meaningful changes in your account. Okay. The second big change, I really like this one, is that we can now undo the changes that were made by a rule. Because I'd say one of the biggest cautions about automated rules is not really previewing and checking the actual impact of a rule on your account. It's easy to set it up and then just kind of not make a mistake about what that rule is actually going to do. It's really important that if you're setting up a rule that, for example, increases your bids or your budget, that you set limits on those rules. Anyway, so what you can do now is you can go into your account, and next to the automated rules, there's a new column called the logs. And you can go to your log and you can actually undo the changes that were made by the rule. So let me give you some information about that. So let's say that you made multiple rules. Let's say that you made 4 changes to a rule. And so you can go and you look at your log and you're like, oh shoot, I really didn't want to do that. I really want to go back to the very first version. Well, you'll notice that there is no undo button on version 1. There's only the undo button on the very last iteration of that rule. But you can still change it. You just have to undo them one by one. So let's just say you made a change Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You'd have to start by undoing Thursday, then you undo Wednesday, then you undo Tuesday, and then you undo Monday. So you can go backwards, but you have to do it step by step. You incidentally cannot redo and undo. So once you've changed that rule, you can't then reapply it to your account. One more thing with this, you can't actually change a manual or something that you've changed manually after the rule ran. So let's take an example. Let's say that you had a rule that changed a set of budgets on or max CPC bids on a set of ad groups. And then after the rule ran, you manually went in and you adjusted one of the max CPC bids. So in this case, if you undo the rule, it's only going to revert the ones that you hadn't manually edited. So that's another thing to keep in mind with these rules. So one other really cool thing is that for any of you who are managing multiple accounts using a My Client Center or an MCC, you can now set up automated rules that run across multiple accounts. So that is really cool, particularly if you're managing accounts where the same set of rules would be applicable to every single client. So what you do is you just click on the Automate drop-down, and it's really, really similar to the process of setting it up in an individual client account. The only difference is that you're going to add, basically you're going to specify which accounts you want to apply the rules to and the currency selection. So just like a rule in an individual account, you also have the ability to preview the results. So I would strongly caution you before you set this up across all of your client accounts to go and make sure that that rule actually makes sense. For any of you who have not used automated rules before, AdWords, the AdWords Help Center, again, has a really good list of some examples of ways that advertisers are using these rules to manage their accounts. For example, there are rules that help you pause or enable low-performing or high-performing ads or keywords. There are rules that you can set up to control your total cost and your total budget. So, for example, you could pause a campaign that's spent a certain amount of its budget, or you could increase a budget for a campaign that has a very high conversion rate. You can schedule ads with rules. You can say, okay, start an ad or an ad group running on this date and turn it off, or turn it on every weekend. So there are lots of different ways that you can use this to take out any of the time-consuming or manual tasks that you are doing with AdWords. In fact, that's probably how I would think about it. I would say, all right, what am I doing on a daily or regular basis with my Google AdWords account that's a pain in the butt and it's taking me a lot of time? And then you may be able to set up an automated rule to actually do that and take some of the labor out of actually managing your account. Okay, so those are the big changes with automation. Let's talk about the sixth change. And this is, I don't know why it took so long to get this one. It's a new exclusion list. As many of you know or may have used, that AdWords has the ability to set up a negative keyword list that you can apply to various campaigns. So this is in something called your shared library in an AdWords account. So basically, if you have, let's say that none of your products are free anywhere in your AdWords account, and so you want to use the negative keyword free for every single ad group. Well, what you would have to, or for every campaign and every ad group, what you would have had to do before is you would have had to go in and add negative free to every place in your account, whether at the campaign level or the ad group level, where you didn't want your ads to trigger when somebody did a search query that included the word free. Now, you can just put that in one place in the shared library, your negative keyword list, and apply that to as many of the campaigns as you want. Okay, so now we have basically the same feature, but it's for placements. So what is a placement? A placement is usually a website. It's someplace on the Google Display Network where your AdWords ads are eligible to appear. So if it was the New York Times as an example, a placement might be, top right corner of the, of the home page or of the business page or the sports section or something like that. And so let's just say, okay, I really don't want my ads to show on these particular sites or these places on these sites. You can create an exclusion list in your shared library, and now you can pick the campaigns that you want to apply them to. So another nice thing is it just kind of centralizes your management. And this is both for keywords and placements, where instead of having to go in and find every ad group or every campaign where you wanted to add a new negative keyword, now we can just add it to that one centralized list in the shared library, and we don't have to edit everything manually. So it's a really nice time saver, and it's kind of something that I was surprised wasn't there in the first place. All right, let's talk about the next big change. And so, sorry, I actually grew up in the 80s, so 80s and 90s, so I could not resist putting this photo up. So Google has made some really big changes to display and how it works. And I'm not going to be able to do it justice talking about it here. I'll give you a brief intro, and then I recommend going into the AdWords blog and the AdWords Help Center to read more up on how the changes will impact you. But basically what's happened is that AdWords completely retooled the contextual engine that determines where your ads can appear on the Google Display Network. And they call this, which is going to explain the picture, the next generation or next gen keyword contextual targeting. So that's the name of this thing. And what it does for you, how it impacts you, is it's now going to let us fine-tune our AdWords campaigns on the Google Display Network down to the keyword level. We can actually see keyword by keyword which words are converting for us when they are used to trigger ads on the Google Display Network, which is pretty awesome. So let's go back to our Australia Zoo example. So Australia Zoo is running some display campaigns, and they've got one display campaign that's targeting Europe, and they have another display campaign that's targeting the U.S. And so the way they would have done this before is they would have said, okay, what are the themes of our ad groups? And, it could be people who are interested in tours, or people who are coming from, various countries, or people with kids, or that kind of stuff. So they would have picked the theme of their target audience, or whatever they were going to be, shooting their ads at. And then they would have come up with keywords that were related to that theme. And so now with this new next generation keyword contextual targeting, So what they can actually do is they can go into their ad groups, and they don't have to, they can look in each of these ad groups and see keyword by keyword which ones are working and which ones are not. So they may find that, okay, within this themed ad group, these 3 keywords are actually converting for me, and this one is doing very poorly. And they can delete that, a low performer, which will help improve their overall performance. So this is next generation keyword contextual targeting. It also, incidentally, really makes it easier to run display campaigns in the same campaign with search. So for brand new advertisers, I typically recommend that they separate search from display. And I still don't not recommend that. If you want to keep your budget separate, you need to do that. But if you have one budget and it's not relevant, or it's not an issue for you to combine your ad spend over these 2 networks, you can now basically view your performance on search and the GDN as 2 separate places. And so you're not going to have to guess about how things are doing in the Google Display Network, because actually, I was astonished to know that it's the first change in 9 years to the interface as far as display goes. So what AdWords did is they yoinked out everything from your networks tab, and they put networks, audiences, and topics under a brand new tab that you may have noticed labeled Display Network. So it didn't go away if you're looking for it. It's just got a new home there. So you can check it out. It's got some of the same features. The interface is a little bit different, but after about 2 minutes, you'll be able to kind of figure out how to manage it. There's also a new report. It dynamically generates a Venn diagram. And what it will do, it's basically going to show you your potential reach of your ads. So let's say that you went into your new display network tab, and then you wanted to kind of target people based on a variety of settings. You wanted to target people based on a bunch of keywords that you picked, some topics, maybe a remarketing list, and so you were using a variety of ways to focus in on a particular audience. So you can use, or now you can see this Venn diagram that can help you get a sense about how many people you have the potential to show your ads to. So it's a really big change. Again, I would recommend you go in and read more about it and watch and see how your display campaigns are performing. You can also, I would go in, I would look at your keywords, and I would really start analyzing it to see which ones are your high and your low performers, and then optimize your accounts from that perspective. Okay. Another big change that piggybacks off of the display network is something called the Display Campaign Optimizer. And unless you are a really large advertiser, and I'm talking you're spending a minimum of $10,000 a month on AdWords and probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month with the display campaign with AdWords, you probably had never heard of the DCO. And Google has been testing it for about a year, and actually it's more than that, since 2010 it launched. And they basically released it to the largest advertisers who had tons and tons of conversions and lots of budget. So they had enough data to really test the software out and improve it. So first of all, what exactly is this thing? I'm assuming most of you have heard of the Conversion Optimizer. So the Conversion Optimizer is available to all advertisers now, and it basically is a tool that automates the management of your account, and it can see basically it predicts the likelihood of a conversion, and it changes bids on particular keywords and helps select places where your ads can show based on the predicted conversion rate. So the Display Campaign Optimizer is basically the same thing, designed specifically for display campaigns. So if you're showing your ads only on the Google Display Network, it will now apply. And the way it works is that you're going to set a CPA goal, a cost per acquisition goal. You will write your ads or put up your creative, your image ads, flash ads, and you set a maximum budget. and then you let it run. And so what it's going to do is it's going to analyze the performance of your ads on various placements on the Google Display Network, on all of the sites on the AdSense network. And as it learns what's working and what's not working, it's going to adjust the bidding strategies and the creative that it shows and the sites pick based on what's working for you and what's getting you towards that CPA goal. So it's really, really powerful, but I will put it out there that it works best on sites that have a lot of data. So it's now publicly available for everybody as long as you have Conversion Optimizer set up for the campaign and you have a minimum of 15 conversions within a 30-day period. So that is the bare minimum. The minimum before was 150 conversions, and now it's a tenth of that. So it's good because a lot of smaller businesses just don't have 150 conversions in a single campaign in a month. But if you don't have a lot of data, it makes it more difficult for the tool to work. So what I would recommend is that if your campaigns actually apply for Display Campaign Optimizer, if you've got Conversion Optimizer set up, you've got 15 conversions this month, try it out and see if it's working for your account. You also, incidentally, of course, need to know what your CPA goal is. So figure out what your cost per acquisition goal is and give it a try. If it's not working, you can always go back, but you do need to monitor this when you first set it up. One other interesting thing about this is that it's not just going to use it's not just going to automate targeted bidding. It's going to look at things like the context of the web pages and the demographics of the people who are looking at the websites, whatever it can do to find places where you're likely to convert. So that's the nice thing about it, because it has information that we as human beings don't have about the potential audience. It has the basically multi-dimensional view of the data where it can figure out and pinpoint which placements are going to be most potentially profitable for your business. So it's a really nice tool with the caveat that you need to test it, you need to make sure that it's working for you, and that it is going to most likely be more successful for advertisers who have a lot of traffic. One other thing, if you're interested in learning more about this, there's actually a really good video on YouTube. If you go to the Google and Your Business channel, there is a video that explains how the Display Campaign Optimizer works and how it's going to calculate bids. This image that you see on the slide is actually a screenshot from that video. So if you want to learn more, that would be a good place to go and check it out. Okay. Last but not least, for anybody who is using AdWords Express, there have been some changes that you may want to note. So the first thing is that AdWords Express is no longer lumped into your Google Places accounts. It now has its own separate home and sign-up flow and reporting interface that is specific for AdWords Express. So we're seeing it move away from Places. Another thing is that there used to be a $50 US minimum for an advertiser to show ads via AdWords Express. And now that's gone. It's basically the minimum is going to be calculated based on what category you want to bid in. I should probably take a step back for anybody who does not know what AdWords Express is. Okay, so Google has two different ways that you can show ads. The first is the standard AdWords platform, which I've been talking about today. And the second place the second platform where Google's ads can be shown is from AdWords Express. And AdWords Express is a simplified version of AdWords. It's really intended for extremely local businesses. So if you are a international company, or if you need to show your ads all over the United States, it's probably not a good option for you. But if you are a mom and pop, if you're a service provider with a very specific area where you want your ads to show, and you really don't want to learn about all the things that I've talked, you really don't want to bother with match types and figure out the display campaign optimizer and work on location targeting and exclusions and negative keyword lists, then AdWords Express is a no-brainer because basically the system does all the work for you. So you put in some basic information. You put in info about your business. You write an ad, and you pick some categories, and you write an ad to go with each category, and then you specify a budget. So Google will have a minimum budget for that category, which you, of course, can bid more. You can pay more if you want. And then you launch it. And that's all you do. So AdWords is going to do the rest. It's going to figure out keywords. It's going to manage the bid process for you. And it's basically going to show your ads. Now, you still pay only for clicks. So in that regard, it's not different. They're not going to charge you just for the privilege of using AdWords Express. So even if your monthly budget is $150, you're not going to pay $150 unless you actually were delivered $150 worth of clicks for that month. So that's some stuff to know with AdWords Express. You are competing in the same auction as regular AdWords advertisers. Your ads can appear in the same places. So that's sort of the lowdown on AdWords Express. The one other thing that I wanted to mention about the change is that there is an improved reporting interface. So it's easier, in my opinion, to see what's working and what's not working within AdWords Express from the new UI. So those are the biggest changes in AdWords. So I'm planning on putting all of those in the next iteration of the book. But all of these things don't change the basis of how the AdWords system works. So all of the foundations that I lay out in this book on Google AdWords will still help you set up your accounts for success. One thing to note is that AdWords is just constantly changing the interface and making tweaks to the algorithm, and it is something that everybody has to keep up with. My favorite places to do that are the Inside AdWords blog, the AdWords Help Center, and if you just log into the user interface, they have little notes at the top about, sometimes there's actually a pop-up box that's showing in my accounts now that tells me that they're going to be changing how ad rotation settings work in the next 30 days. So it's just how it is, but it keeps you on your toes. So I hope this was helpful for you all, and those are the biggest changes that I have seen since January 1st. And now I would like to open it up to any questions. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Anastasia, for an outstanding webcast. We do have a few questions that came in, and we'll just let attendees know. Please, if you have a question for Anastasia, type it into the group chat, send it in, and we'll have her answer it while she is still with us. Okay, I'll just read you a couple that did come in. First question, if you have free as a negative keyword and someone searches for buy X not free, you'll miss out on that very valid search for someone who actually wanted to buy pay. What do you suggest here?
Wow, that's a tough one. Okay, so what you could do, I'm reading this. If you have free as a keyword and someone searches for buy X not free, well, interesting. I miss on that very valid search. You could try two things. You could certainly, I would test it without putting free in at first, and you could see based on your See Search Terms report, well, how much am I actually spending on invalid searches using the keyword free? So basically you're going to see, if I don't include the word free as a negative keyword, how much money am I wasting, am I losing? If you find that you're actually, the amount of profit that you're making from that extremely valid search, buy X not free, then you may just decide to leave that out. You could also put in something like an exact negative keyword. So for your keyword, let's just say that your product is named Product X. So you could have the exact negative keyword free product X. So if somebody typed that string in and you know that they're looking for a free option of that product, then your ad can't trigger. So what you could do, don't include free in your negative keyword list. monitor your C search terms report, and as you can identify search strings that are not converting and indicate that that person wants a free version of the product, add that in as an exact negative match keyword to your negative keyword list. All right, so that's what I would do. I hope that helps, Simon.
Thank you, Anastasia. And we do have another one here. One landing page for one product has average or above average for the experience, yet another ad can be below average, yet it's the same sort of page, just a different product. I guess Simon might be looking for your input on that.
Well, it might be that one of the pages, the algorithm thinks that the verbiage on the page is, for whatever reason, more applicable to the keyword in the account. So it could also be on the historical conversion rate of that page. It might be that one of the pages, the load time is heavier. So Google looks at a variety of factors for your landing page quality. So I would probably experiment a little bit with the below average page, see if you can make it a little bit more keyword centric or just tweak those keywords. Just make sure you don't have any really large images on there that might be slowing down that page. As long as your ads, as long as your ads are still eligible to appear, I don't get too hung up on it. Obviously, if it wasn't showing ads, that would be a real problem. But you can work on tweaking that. It's just kind of one of those frustrations that all AdWords advertisers have to deal with, where you sometimes have two keywords that really, from a human perspective, should pretty much be performing about the same, and one will have a higher quality score. And we can say the same thing for the particular landing page. But just keep experimenting, and I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Another question here. Let me see if I can understand it. Question is, in AdWords, is it possible to exclude words but allow those excluded words to appear in a phrase?
Is it possible to exclude words but allow them to appear in a phrase? So you exclude the word free as an example. So that's your negative keyword. And then you include the phrase match keyword, free trips to Australia. So the short answer is no. If you have free in as a negative keyword, it is most likely going to exclude that ad from actually appearing. So what you would probably want to do is, pretty much going back to the first discussion, is add in exact negative match keywords around different iterations of free. So that's how I would handle it.
Thank you, Anastasia. And our final question, has Google recently changed how they display quality score? Now showing expected click-through rate, ad relevance, and landing page experience. My experience is that AdWords are underrating the score and saying they are below average. AdWords is always changing how they display things in various accounts. I believe a few of my accounts are showing that. Some of my accounts are actually showing the older version of AdWords. So at any given time, AdWords is displaying or experimenting with different user interfaces for different folks out there. So the short answer is probably yes, and you may be part of a beta test. I need to log into all my client accounts today, and they may have rolled that into many of them. But as far as the functionality or the actual calculations for quality score, I have not heard about any changes in that. So quality score is the same, essentially. But how they actually show it in your account, how they show anything in your AdWords accounts is always something that they might be trying to improve for the advertisers. Thank you so much, Anastasia. Those are all the questions I see that have come in. As we wrap up and close the session, was there anything additional you'd like to leave our attendees with today?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time. I know how difficult it is to listen and talk to sort of this disembodied person, talk about software for an hour, but I hope this was helpful, and good luck with your advertising programs. I wish you all the very best.
Oh, thank you so much, Anastasia, for an outstanding webcast today, for sharing all your knowledge and expertise with us. We'd like to thank all the attendees that attended today's webcast and hope you benefited. We would also like to let you all know Anastasia's book, Google AdWords, is the O'Reilly deal of the day. That means we have it on special just for all of you folks for attending the webcast. please visit O'Reilly.com. Look on the right-hand side. You can't miss it. It's right there at a special price for you all. Again, thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, everyone. This will conclude today's webcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.